Hey everyone, it's your boy here, Mr. James, back at it yet again with another big orange biology or satellite edition or whatever. Today we're going to continue talking about ecology a little bit. As I mentioned in the last video, we're waiting on further guidance on exactly what the test is going to look like so I can make sure the review material is directed towards it. That should be done by the end of the week, and I'll make an update video whenever that information becomes public, and I will talk about it there like I did last time. Okay, so today we're going to go back to what we were doing, pick up where we left off, and talk about interactions. But we're already almost a third way through it, so hey, it's cool. So let's talk about limiting factors. Now, abiotic and abiotic factors, cellular are big things here, so make sure you understand. Cellular activities, organismal activities, and the structure of population communities and ecosystems will all be affected by the interactions with biotic and abiotic factors. For instance, density-dependent regulation in cell division. So cells typically not cancerous whenever they're in high density because it inhibits cellular division. When you take away a cell's ability to take away that inhibition, the cell is going to divide uncontrollably. Biofilm generations, we talked about this similar concept. As the population reaches a certain threshold, it causes a morphological change in the prokaryote biofilm, which is like a big old cyst that builds up until eventually ruptures and spreading more of the prokaryotes throughout the system. Things like predator-prey relationship. This is a biotic factor relationship. As the prey population increases, this is a classic hare-lynx situation. As the prey population increases, so does the predator population, but as the predator population over increases, it causes the prey population to crash within the corresponding years, which in turn causes the predator population to crash. When the predator population crashes, the prey population will skyrocket, and it's a nice little ebb and flow. And you can see right here in this one year, about early 1900s, the predator-prey populations were almost 1-to-1. And in doing so, that caused a complete crash, almost the predator. And that was, if I remember right, this was a peak fur trading period. So that population was so low. But the prey population crashed because it was, building up from a pretty high year. Yeah, it went through a trough, but kind of, resurged pretty okay. After that, it kind of made sure it's about roughly, quarter to a half, no more than 3/4 of the population of prey. Abiotic factors, things like resource availability. Here's a dung beetle whirling on some, dung. If that resource is not available, that dung beetle population is going to be pretty low. Also, the structure of community. So these are different plants found in different communities, and that's going to be a factor as well in abiotic. Another major abiotic factor is algal blooms. So this here is off a coastline. These big swirls are actually the different amounts of algae growing based off farm runoff. Farm and factory runoff, when it goes into the water, it introduces more limiting resources, such as phosphorus and nitrogen. Excess phosphorus and nitrogen causes the algae in the water, which all of a sudden now has the one limiting resource that was keeping them in check, available to them. So the algae is going to explode and create an algal bloom situation, which is disastrous for the local ecology. So in all cases, abiotic and abiotic factors interactions both play a role in effectively affecting the biological systems at all levels of organizations. Now these could be beneficial, detrimental, or variable depending on, the system and the state at the time of the interaction. An algal bloom initially is pretty great. Falls in the fish have more food. The problem is, over time, the algal bloom's a problem because there's not enough fish to eat the algae because they're used to eating a very low amount. And because the algae is all of a sudden exploding, it's dying faster than it can be eaten, and there's going to be more decomposers rotting it, and they're going to consume more oxygen, thus taking away oxygen from the fish that are trying to eat the algae, causing the fish to suffocate in the water, which causes more decomposers to come in, which makes the system even more oxygen deprived, and so on and so forth. Biodiversity. So the benefit of having biodiversity is basically the ability for a population to respond to change. It's resilience. Populations with the least amount of genetic diversity are most likely at risk for any extinction in an ecosystem because they're less resilient. They have less genetic diversity in their genome. The classic example is the potato blight. A little story time, if those are not familiar with the Irish potato famine. One probably good reason why some of y'all have your ancestors moved here. And that's why mine did. The Irish potato famine is a blight spread by a fungus. And here's what it actually looks like on the leaves. It infects the leaves, and it causes the leaves to degrade, and it spreads down to the tuber that is the potato. And when they harvest the potato, it is it is infected or blighted to where it's inedible. Now, the Irish potato famine is actually a multi-series event. As you can see here, this is where it happened. So, estimation of produce at the peak at 1844 was about, we're going to assume 14,000 tons. So 14,000 of tons. 14,000 thousands of tons. A lot. So we're looking at millions here. And you can see how the yearly per kilogram per acre and acreage in saturated areas. And this is when the potato blight hits. So you see a massive crash of the potato output over about a 2-year period. And that's the thing. The Irish weren't like reckless. They kept food behind. The problem is what they were doing was, well, potato is a relatively cheap crop. You could take one potato, cut it up into chunks, put it in your garden, and you would get many more potatoes. And you could do this for several. So you would end up having a lot of what we call monocultures. And because the way of reproducing was asexual, there were clones. So all these potatoes that were growing over Ireland were often based off the same one or two families, of one or two individuals of potato. So when the potato blight hit, they hit a monoculture hard, and there was no resistance, no resilience to the potato blight. Now, the Irish did have stockpiles of food, so it wasn't like at first it was a problem. It just over successive generations of getting hit with potato blight after potato blight, the damage was done. So between the periods of 1844 and 1848, a good chunk of the potato crop dissipated in all of Ireland. And around this time period, roughly, and you see where the third wave hits, about 1 million Irish leave Ireland. They immigrate from Ireland, and most of them goes to settle in New York and Boston, and also a good chunk of them come down here. But they end up moving away because of this potato blight. There's also a whole bunch of stuff with England and this, and it gets complicated. But this was an example of a monoculture creating a problem. So genetic diversity leads to a diversity of responses amongst individuals in the system. Basically, the response can be physiological or behavioral, but basically, the more diversity you have, the more likely you're going to have individuals in your population already resistant to any or resilient to any change to the environment. Black plague survival. Now we're talking about Alright, so not everybody died of the plague. That's another thing. Black Plague was not a one-time event. It was successive events over centuries. It wasn't until the last plague in England was when they finally got rid of Thatcher colleges. It took the London fire to destroy the plague in England because it burned down all the Thatcher housing that kept all the rats at place. Beside the point. Anyway, a good portion of the population actually had resilience to the Black Plague, so they survived. They may have been scarred for life, but they survived. And that's what led to one of the major revolutions of serfdom and everything. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, Black Plague survival. Another behavior is stampede behavior. So this behavior is basically if one individual is running, okay, if that one individual convinces a couple other individuals to run, it all of a sudden goes, oh, we all need to run because it's panic time. This is what happens. Now, it's survival instinct. If you see one individual running, like, that's weird. But if you see several people running, you think, oh my gosh, I need to run too. Because your survival instincts are going to kick in and you go, man, that seems like there's probably a threat. Or when somebody's going buying up all the toilet paper, you see all the toilet paper shelves are empty and you hear about people buying all this toilet paper and you go to the store because you need to buy toilet paper all of a sudden and it's all sold out. So you're running out and buying all the toilet paper that you could find anywhere because you see shelves emptying. You create a panic situation. Topical. All right. Now, modeling diversity here. There's ways we can model diversity, genetic diversity. We can use Hardy-Weinberg. You can just use straight genetic sampling, phenotypic sampling, or fossil records. We can look at the fossil records and we can see biodiversity during the Phanerozoic. This is all time here for the most part. You can see the mass extinction events. The yellow arrows are mass extinctions. The blue arrows are minor extinction events, but they're kind of a big deal. Back to that. But we can see here most of the well-resolved genera, that's all major genuses. The majority of them are extinct. That's the way of life. We can know this by looking at the fossil record, and the general trend is life tends to go down. That's how it works. Oh wait, we're going the opposite direction. So this is Cambrian, and you can see it explodes. But most of the major extinctions have happened. You can see all genera, a good chunk of them have died off over time. Sorry, I read the graph backwards. Typically, we don't go that direction. It's midnight here. So, excuse me. We can look at the various different diversities. Alright, before we go into that, I think it's be a good stopping point because this kind of goes into the interactions a bit more. Okay, so to recap here, excuse me. First off, populations interact with each other, and whenever they do, they have various limiting factors. You can have, basically it all comes down to abiotic and biotic factors. Now, increased genetic diversity is going to help you respond to any changes in those biotic and abiotic factors that surround you. So things like, a plague or a potato blight can be resilient. You can be resistant if you have greater genetic diversity. See, a potato blight or any kind of disease would be a biotic factor for the most part. And when those biotic factors spread, your ecosystem needs to be able to respond to change. By having increased diversity, you're able to respond to those biotic changes. And you can have abiotic changes where you say you introduce like extra nutrients to a system, you integrate algal blooms. If you have organisms resistant to the toxins and stuff that may come about because of the algal blooms, they're going to survive better and reproduce better. So having genetic diversity increase, biodiversity by nature of that, you're going to have increased resilience and response time. All right, that was this quick little video here. So next time, we're going to talk about community interactions and go from there. All right, I'm Mr. Jennings. Have a wonderful day.